Yumi was only 8 years old when her life was shattered by a simple brown envelope. Her mother, drowning in debt, signed a dirty contract that traded her daughter for $300. Rana didn't understand anything when a man in a black suit took her to a strange house, far from school, far from her friends. She carried only a pink backpack and a frightened look. The man didn't say a word. Her mother? She didn't even say goodbye. Years later, Hannah would remember that day as the beginning of her loneliness. On that gray, stifling morning, the smell of burnt rice mixed with the cries of a child. The wooden shack, with a makeshift roof and hole-ridden walls, barely protected its residents from the cold or the heat. It was there at the end of a forgotten alley in a poor South Korean village that Yumi lived, an 8-year-old girl with sad eyes and straight hair, unevenly cut by her own mother. Her pale skin contrasted with the dark circles that revealed sleepless nights. She wore a faded blue dress with patch seams and old sandals that dragged across the dirt floor. That day, she woke up before sunrise, as always, to sweep the floor, heat the water for her mother's bath, and prepare porridge with the last few grains they had. Her mother, young Soon, was a bitter woman, consumed by poverty and alcohol. With disheveled hair and perpetually red eyes, she barely spoke to Yumi. There was no affection, no embrace, only yelling, shoving, and silence. Yumi didn't understand the reason for such hatred, but she obeyed, hoping one day to hear a simple thank you. That morning, something felt different. Her mother got dressed in a hurry, put on lipstick for the first time in months, and muttered things like, "Luck is going to change today." Yumi, confused, kept doing her chores until she was called. "Yumi, put on that old dress. We're going out." The girl obeyed. She grabbed the blue dress and followed her mother. The streets seemed even quieter than usual. They walked down a dirt road where a black car waited. A well-dressed middle-aged man stepped out and greeted young Soon with a forced smile. Yumi, shy, hid behind her mother. "Is this her?" The man asked. "Yes." Healthy and obedient. Just as agreed, young Soon replied coldly. Yumi didn't understand. The man knelt, touched her chin, and said, "Pretty eyes. She'll be useful." Her mother grabbed an envelope full of money. She counted it quickly and, without looking back, pushed Yumi toward the car. "Go with him. You're going to live with him now." "Mommy, where are we going?" Yumi asked, holding her mother's arm. But the woman pulled away harshly. "Go. Don't embarrass me." Yumi didn't cry. She just entered the car silently. The engine roared, and her mother's image faded in the rear-view mirror. The girl rested her forehead on the window, feeling the cold glass and the warmth of the tears that finally fell. The trip lasted hours. The man, Mr. Kong, spoke little. He only said she needed to be useful, clean well, and obey without questions. When they arrived at the mansion, Yumi was stunned. It was a completely different world. A perfect garden, white walls, glass windows, wide stairs. But the air felt cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the complete absence of warmth. She was greeted by a stern housekeeper and taken to a small room in the back, windowless, with an old tatami mat and a thin blanket. "You work here now. No wandering around the main house without permission," the woman said. Yumi nodded. That night, alone in that cold room, she cried for the first time without hiding the sound. Her pillow was soaked. The silence was as suffocating as the pain of not understanding why her mother had abandoned her. The next day, her routine began. Cleaning, sweeping, washing dishes, carrying heavy buckets, scrubbing toilets. An endless cycle of labor. The girl was ignored by everyone in the house, except for one boy, Jihoon, the eldest son of the family, 11 years old. Jihoon was quiet but curious. He watched Yumi from a distance, sometimes leaving a hidden piece of bread for her or a candy on the stairs. He never spoke to her in front of adults, but one night, while she scrubbed the veranda floor, he came closer. "What's your name?" He whispered. "Yumi. I'm Jihoon. Do you like reading?" Yumi shook her head. She had never owned a book. He disappeared and returned with a small children's book. He handed it to her in secret. "This one's my favorite. But be careful. If my mom finds out, She might hit us both. Yumi held the book as if it were gold. It was the first act of kindness she received in a long time. Slowly, a quiet friendship formed between the two. Ji-hoon would mark pages with hard words, and Yumi tried to learn them on her own. It was her only comfort in a life full of pain. One afternoon, the housekeeper found the book hidden under the tatami mat. Furious, she dragged Yumi by her hair into the living room. "Stealing from the family, is that it?" she screamed. Yumi tried to explain, but the woman didn't listen. As punishment, she locked the girl in the basement. Alone in the dark, Yumi cried silently. The pain of abandonment returned like a knife in her chest. Days later, Ji-hoon appeared, slipping a blanket and a piece of fruit through the door crack. "Hang in there. I'll get you out of here." One day. But time passed, and Yumi began to lose hope. She was just a little girl. Invisible, forgotten, abandoned by the one who should have protected her. At age 10, she already had sorrowful lines etched into her eyes. And then, one day, Ji-hoon left. His family sent him abroad to study. He didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Yumi saw the car driving away from the kitchen window, and for the first time, her heart truly broke. She was alone again. The house remained cold. Loneliness was her only companion. Yumi, the 8-year-old girl sold for $300, had become just a shadow, silently waiting, unknowingly, for a miracle. The sun rose without brightness that morning. Yumi woke up startled by a scream coming from the next room. The man who had bought her life for $300 was drunk again, and, like every night, he took out his frustration on his wife and biological children. But toward Yumi, he harbored a special kind of hatred, a hatred she couldn't understand. Maybe because she was a constant reminder of his moral failure, or maybe just because she was a defenseless child he could crush without consequence. She ran to the corner of the laundry room, where she slept wrapped in an old blanket. Her stomach growled, but she knew she couldn't go to the kitchen yet. She had to wait until he left. Silence was her only weapon. Her breathing was controlled. Her eyes were swollen from crying through the night. She didn't dare to dream, because even dreams were denied to her. At school, Yumi was a portrait of loneliness. The other children avoided her, both because of her disheveled appearance and the smell of unwashed clothes. The teacher tried to help, but the girl never said a word. She was afraid that anything she said would come back as punishment at home. In this dark setting, a new hope emerged. One day, a young social worker named Hannah started visiting the school. Observant and sensitive, she quickly noticed something about Yumi didn't fit. When she tried to talk, the girl only lowered her eyes. Hannah began to take notes, discreetly. Purple marks on her arms, a wince of pain when she sat down, refusal to eat snacks, small signs that, to trained eyes, screamed for help. But Hannah needed more. She needed Yumi to speak. On a rainy afternoon, the social worker offered the girl a drawing. "Can you draw how you feel?" Yumi hesitated, then picked up the black crayon. She drew a small house, without windows. Inside, a little girl was crying. All around, shadows. Hannah swallowed hard. That picture spoke more than 1,000 words. On her way home, Yumi was beaten for borrowing a pencil. Her muffled screams drowned out by the loud radio of her stepfather. It was the first time that Hannah, seeing the bruises the next day, decided to act. But the bureaucracy was cruel. There wasn't enough concrete evidence, and the neighbors refused to testify. Everyone knew, but no one wanted to get involved. Yumi started losing weight. She had dark circles under her eyes and no longer responded to her own name. The school reported the situation to the authorities, but the slowness of the system turned every day into a risk. Meanwhile, Mr. Khan was planning something worse. Seeing that Yumi was useless for household chores, he considered handing her over to a contact who did jobs in another city. A disappearance. A new hell. One night, Yumi overheard a conversation through a crack in the door. Her heart nearly leapt out of her chest. She didn't fully understand what being taken away meant, but she felt the despair taking over. She ran to the laundry room, grabbed the drawing she made with Hannah, and hid it in her underwear. She knew she had to escape. But how? The The next day, during recess, she hid behind the school court, waiting for Hannah. When the social worker arrived, Yumi was shaking, her eyes filled with tears. She held out the drawing, now crumpled and dirty, and whispered a single word: "Help." That was enough. Hannah activated every protocol she could. With great effort, she secured a temporary protective order. Within hours, Yumi was removed from Mr. Kang's house and taken to a temporary shelter. But the trauma, that wouldn't go away easily. At the shelter, Yumi didn't speak. She was afraid to trust. She cried every night, feeling guilty for leaving. She blamed herself for her mother not coming with her. She blamed herself for everything. A child psychologist named Dr. Kenji began working with her. Patiently, he used games, drawings, and stories to try to break through her wall of pain. One afternoon, Yumi paused the block game and asked, "Dr. Kenji, is it a sin not to love your own mother?" He froze. He knew that was the deepest question she could ask. He took a deep breath and answered, "It's not a sin to feel pain, Yumi. Loving someone who hurt you is confusing, and you're not wrong for feeling that way." She cried like never before, a cry that came from deep within her soul. That day, the first thread of healing began to form. Meanwhile, Hannah fought to find a foster family, someone who didn't just want to help, but was willing to love. Truly, Yumi, in turn, began drawing windows on her little houses. Small changes, small steps, but the shadow of the past still loomed. Mr. Kong filed a lawsuit to revoke the protective custody, claiming he missed a girl. Panic set in. Hannah knew if Yumi went back, she wouldn't survive. It was time to fight like never before. Testimonies were gathered. The school principal's statement was crucial. Then, something unexpected happened. Yumi's mother appeared at the courthouse. For the first time in years, she looked her daughter in the eyes. She looked worn, but somehow different. She said she wanted to protect the girl. But Yumi hid behind Hannah. She didn't want to go back. She didn't trust. And in that moment, the judge saw the truth. Custody was permanently denied to Mr. Kong. The mother, under supervision, would be allowed visits in the future. Yumi was finally safe. At the shelter, for the first time, she smiled while eating rice with eggs. It was simple, but it was warm. It was hers. And Hannah, with tears in her eyes, promised, You're going to be very happy one day, my little one. You'll run through a garden, hair in the wind, with no fear of being hit. I promise." If you were moved by the story of Yumi, subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and share with someone. Comment below, what would you do if you were in her place? The days of the foster home had brought peace to Yumi. The silence of the night was no longer broken by screams of pain. The smell of rice and fresh flowers in the hallway had replaced the mold and alcohol she used to smell in that luxurious house where she lived. But the peace she felt was fragile. Inside her, the ghosts of the past still screamed. One morning, Hannah, the social worker responsible for Yumi, noticed a girl drawing a shadowy figure. It was a woman holding a bottle in one hand and dragging a child by the hair with the other. Hannah sat down beside her. "Who is this, Yumi?" The girl remained silent for a few seconds, the pencil trembling in her fingers. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she answered, "It's my mother." Hannah felt her chest tighten. It was the first time Yumi spontaneously spoke about her past. It was a sign of trust, but also of deep pain. "Do you want to tell me what happened, Yumi? I'm here with you, okay?" And then, as if opening a floodgate, the words began to flow. Yumi said that when she was only 5 years old, her mother started going out every night and coming back smelling of alcohol. That sometimes there was no food at home, and she had to eat raw rice or ask neighbor for leftovers. That neighbors would knock on the door complaining about the screams, but no one called for help. That one day, her mother said she was going to leave her with a friend for a while. But this friend was Mr. Shang, an old man with cold eyes who handed money to Yumi's mother. And she simply left. He said I was his now. That my mother didn't want me anymore, Yumi said, her voice breaking. And he made me clean the whole house. He wouldn't let me go outside, and sometimes—" She couldn't go on. Hannah gently hugged her, feeling the small body tremble in her arms. Silent tears streamed down the girl's face. The following weeks were all about rebuilding. Hannah scheduled sessions with psychologists, tried to locate Mr. Shang, and kept Yumi under close observation. The girl began to have nightmares. She would wake up screaming, soaked in sweat, begging not to return to that dark room. Then Hannah received a notification from the court. Yumi's biological mother had filed a petition to regain custody. Hannah couldn't believe it. After everything she had heard, how could that woman dare try to come near again? But what Hannah didn't know, and would soon find out, was that behind the request was Mr. Shang. He had pressured Yumi's mother, threatening to expose secrets from her past to the police. She agreed to be used as a bridge to get Yumi back, and promised to return the girl to him as soon as she had custody. It was a cruel plan, and Hannah, with her sharp instinct, felt that something was wrong. Yumi, meanwhile, was terrified. When she heard her mother wanted to see her, she froze. "She wants to take me back?" She asked, eyes wide. "She can't. She can't." Hannah held her hands firmly. "I will protect you, Yumi. I promise. No one will take you away without a fight." The hearing was approaching. Hannah was preparing documents, photos, reports. But she knew she needed something more. She needed the truth. And it had to come from Yumi herself. If the girl could find the courage to tell the judge everything she had gone through. Days before the hearing, Yumi wrote a letter to the judge. Hannah didn't read it out of respect. She only sealed it in an envelope. On the day of the hearing, when the judge asked if Yumi wanted to say anything, she stood up, the letter in her hands. Her legs trembled, but her voice came out steady. "This is my story. Please listen to me." The long-awaited day of the hearing had arrived. The sole courtroom was silent, yet heavy with tension and expectation. Hannah held tightly onto Yumi's hand, now 12 years old. Her still childlike eyes bore deep marks of pain and premature maturity. They were about to decide her future. The decision that day wouldn't just be about custody. It was about liberation. The judge, an older man with gray hair and a firm voice, entered the room. Everyone stood. At his side, prosecutors, lawyers, and representatives from the orphanage and social services took their positions. The empty chair in front of the court was where Yumi was meant to sit. Hannah gave her a light squeeze of encouragement. Yumi walked to the center of the room. Everyone could see her trembling hands and the sweat running down her forehead, but she took a deep breath. "You may sit down, Yumi," said the judge calmly. Yumi sat. The silence was total. The judge opened the case file, looked at her, and said, "We are here to decide what is best for you. I know this isn't easy, but I need you to tell me, honestly, what you want for your life going forward." Yumi looked at Hannah, then lowered her gaze. "Your Honor, I just want to stay somewhere where no one will hurt me anymore, where I can sleep without fear, where I won't be sold like I'm worth nothing." A murmur swept through the room. The judge continued, "Do you want to tell us what happened at Mr. Shang's house and with your mother?" Yumi nodded, then began to speak. For over 20 minutes, between tears and pauses, she recounted details that chilled everyone to the bone. She spoke of her mother's screams, the slaps when she didn't bring money, the rationed food, the heavy chores. She told of the day Mr. Shang appeared, the envelope of money on the table, and her mother's silence as she turned her back while he took Yumi away. "I cried in the car. He said I belonged to him now, and that if I did anything wrong, he'd send me back, and Mommy wouldn't take me back." Her words fell like stones in the courtroom. The prosecutor, visibly shaken, asked the judge to include Yumi's account in the official case file as legitimate testimony. The judge agreed. Then the courtroom doors opened. A young man entered, wearing a suit with a letter in hand. He was Mr. Shang's son, who had gone abroad to study. His name was Jeho. The judge allowed him to speak. Jeho bowed and requested to speak. He handed the letter to the judge. Your Honor, this letter is mine. I heard about the hearing and had to come. My father made many mistakes. He treated Yumi like property. But I saw who she really was. A girl with a wounded soul, but full of light. I tried to protect her as best I could. And when I left, I promised I'd return one day to see her free. I asked that this letter be read as part of this hearing. The judge read the letter in silence. When he finished, he closed his eyes for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and then declared, after hearing Yumi's testimony, the statements from social services, and Mr. Jeho's declaration, this court declares that Yumi's custody will be permanently transferred to the Child Protection System. Her mother and Mr. Sean will lose all rights over her. Hannah, as a responsible social worker, will remain her guardian until a permanent adoption is approved. The hearing is concluded. Yumi burst into tears. Hannah held her tightly as the room emptied in silence. But before they left, Jeho approached. He knelt to her level and said, I promised I'd come back. And I did. You're free now, Yumi. And if one day you want to write a new chapter, I'll be nearby. Yumi smiled with a light heart. For the first time, would you like to continue a sequel from here or turn this into a script? Hannah looked at Yumi, the way someone watches a flower finally bloom after spending so long in the dark. She knew she couldn't protect her forever, but she could ensure that when she let her go, it would be to a safe place, where love wasn't an empty promise, but a daily reality. That's when Hannah met the couple Min-jun and Suah. They were in their 40s, kind and calm, and owned a small literary cafe in a mountain town. They couldn't have children, but the desire to be parents had never left them. When they met Yumi, Suah's eyes filled with tears, not out of pity, but out of empathy. Min-jun, quiet, just smiled and offered the girl a hot chocolate. For the first time, Yumi felt welcome without being judged. The adoption went smoothly. Hannah oversaw everything, as if handing over a piece of her own heart. Yumi left for her new life with only a few belongings, but full of hope. Years passed. Yumi grew up. She became a beautiful young woman, her eyes still carrying a shadow of the past, but now with a bright light. Studious, determined, and kind-hearted. She never forgot Hannah, sending her letters whenever she could. Her new family treated her like a daughter by blood. She grew up helping in the cafe, reading books, serving cakes, and learning about the world with gentleness. The pain of the past was never forgotten, but it was transformed. She decided to become a doctor. She wanted to save lives the way Hannah had saved hers. At university, the unexpected happened. During a lecture, she recognized a face from her past. It was Jeho, the young son of Mr. Sean. Even in the dark, cruel world she once lived in, he had been the one gentle light. He recognized her, too. He smiled. They started talking. Their friendship was rekindled, but now they were adults, and the affection between them deepened into something more. She no longer saw the shadow of his father in him, but the brightness of someone who had chosen to be good. One day, after a walk in the snow, he embraced her. Yumi's heart raced. She cried, not out of fear, but relief. For the first time, she allowed herself to love. They dated for 2 years. They graduated together, and they decided to marry. The ceremony was simple, held in the garden of Yumi's adoptive parents' cafe. Hannah was there, smiling with pride, but fate still had one more chapter. A few months after the wedding, Hannah fell ill, a rare, silent disease that required constant care. Yumi, now a doctor, temporarily left her job to care for the one who had once cared for her. During the night, Hannah would wake and see Yumi sleeping beside her, holding her hand. "You saved me, my sole daughter," she would whisper weakly. The recovery was slow, but full of love. Hannah survived. Yumi, now with her life rebuilt, knew that everything she'd gone through hadn't been in vain. Every tear, every pain, every fearful night had shaped the woman she had become. And now, Beside Jeho, her adoptive parents, and with Hannah still alive, she could finally say, I made it! Did you cry with Yumi's story? Then subscribe now, leave a like, and comment what touched you the most. And don't miss the next video, because the next story will break your heart.